When it comes to sales, it can feel really icky. I mean, at the end of the day, we've all been in that situation. The used car salesman, the electronics dealer, the lady in the change room who is telling you that that looks great on you and your butt does not look big in it, but you know that that's not correct. And so even though retail is all about selling, sometimes we can feel a little bit icky. But what if we could change the way we sell? What if we could sell differently? Well, that is exactly the name of the podcast that today's guest has. She sells differently. And sales coach Andee Hart is going to give us some strategies and some tips and some tricks that we can use to grow our businesses and to sell in a way that is more aligned with probably how we would love to sell and be sold to as consumers. Welcome back to the Bringing Business to Retail podcast, where we talk all about strategies and solutions to make you more money in your retail or e-commerce business. Andee Hart, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Sal. I'm so excited to be here.
We love talking about making money and selling stuff. So I am so glad that you're here. And I would love to know, before we even jump in, do you know of one of those situations that I just mentioned, the used car salesman, the electronics dealer, the lady it's usually a lady, but the person in the change room telling you, you look fantastic in it when you know that you don't? Tell me your story.
Oh, man, this is one of my cringe stories, and I bet so many of your listeners can relate. I had actually a good friend of mine that long ago, and only share this because I know that they're not listening. They are long friend ago, but they invited me over to have dinner one Friday night. And they said, hey, we would love to catch up. We have some news we want to share with you. And I was like, oh, well, that's so sweet. I just knew that they were going to tell me that they were expecting.
Everybody knows that situation.
Yes. And I was like, that's so sweet. Like they made me feel very special. Like they were having me over for dinner and it was just me. And keep in mind, I was very good friends with them. And so I get there, and Sal, I kid you not, there were probably 50 other people. And I'm thinking in my mind, oh, okay, it's like a party. They're going to announce to everyone, and they're going to have dinner. And so they usher us all in a room, and it is a sales pitch for a new travel sales program that they have joined, and they're trying to get us all to join with them. And I was hungry because I came for dinner. That's what they told me, And B, I was so frustrated and so disheartened because I was good friends with them and I was told one thing and made to feel like I was coming, for something special, to hear something exciting. And I will never forget that moment. And it actually changed our friendship to some degree, And so I'm sure everyone has moments like that, but I was like, I never want to be that kind of salesperson. If that's what it takes to, manipulate and make someone feel one way when it's completely opposite, that's not the kind of sales I want to be a part of. So that is my story.
I hear you. And as you were talking about that, I just remembered same, but different. I was young. I'm going to say I was maybe in my late 20s, and I was, climbing up the government ladder, not the corporate ladder, but climbing up the government ladder. And gentlemen who I worked for the local council, and the gentleman who worked for a more affluent local council messaged me and said, hey, would you love to catch up for coffee? I've got a job that you might be interested in. And so I turned up, very similar to you. He tries to sell me into Amway. I remember just thinking, am I this stupid? Or I didn't really know. He wasn't a friend. He was literally a business colleague. And like you, I remember thinking, this is a thing? Like, I never want to be this.
Yeah, it was one of those situations where I also was in the middle of, working towards my MBA, and they were just very pushy of like, well, not seeking to understand were my goals at the time, which I'm sure we'll dive into a little bit here in a minute, but it was just making me feel or trying to make me feel stupid for not joining this or taking part in this opportunity, right?
In air quotes,
But it was not
opportunity.
at all aligned. Yeah. And so it was just a classic example of not taking time to seek to understand what my goals and aspirations or what, my problem that I was trying to solve was, which my problem at that point, and I wouldn't say problem, but was I wanted to get my MBA, right? I had no time at all for anything else on my plate. And so I was not their ideal client
No,
at all.
no. So
So
speaking of which, you were just saying that you were sitting for your MBA, you're undertaking your MBA. You ended up going into tech sales
yes.
and was there for a very long time. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey? Because most people don't wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to do an MBA and I'm going to get into tech sales.
Right? Yes. I think it's just funny how my path into technology sales happened. Funny enough, I wanted to be a dance teacher. I grew up taking dance and competitive dance all my life. And when I went to university, I had a business plan as a senior to start a dance studio. And one of my college professors, which I actually now just moved back to the town I went to university in. So I have gotten to catch up with her and we laugh about it now. We're good friends, but she made me interview for Dell Technologies, which probably so many of your listeners have heard of because they're a global company. But I interviewed and they offered me the job. And I remember just praying about it and thinking, this could be really good real world experience for a year or two. And I could save up and then start my dance studio. In the meantime, I actually had an old dance injury flare up and I had to have knee surgery. And so it would have been really difficult to start my dance studio immediately after graduating. Fast forward, and 17 years later, I was still in technology sales because even though I hated having a quota every quarter, every year, I thrived on it. It was like a game. And everyone that's ever been in sales always says it's like the golden handcuffs. And so I did it for 17 years until I left and started She Sells Differently and started my candle company. And so, yeah, that's kind of just the funny journey. It just kind of fell in my lap, technology sales, but it really taught me such valuable skills in life because no matter what you do, whether you carry a quota or not, you are selling every day.
And this is I would love to know before we jump into my question about quotas is, do you think she saw something in you, the teacher, and how does she sell this to you? Because we're talking all about sales and we talked about your friends who tried to sell you something that wasn't aligned. It sounds like this teacher was trying to sell you that something that wasn't aligned. So why did you do this, but not the travel thing that your friends were selling?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I think that she wanted me to get the interview experience. I know that she saw in me the ability to do the job. I think she just wanted me to have the interview experience. And whether I did the job or not, I think she would say now, she knew, I would go places. I mean, she would say that now, but the job that my friend or the opportunity that my friends gave me, that was actually years later. I met them in my first job at Dell. And so I guess it's just interesting kind of the way the chips fall sometimes and how it all happened. But I often think back that I could not do what I'm doing now, not even without the sales experience, but also just the life lessons that I learned in corporate and how to run a business, how to manage and lead people well that were so valuable. And so, yeah, I think it's interesting how things happen and everything in life happens to prepare you for something down the road.
I want to come back to this question about quotas because it's itching at the back of my brain, but you keep having great conversation and I have to just Take
Yes.
take us where the conversation is going. So one of the things there you just mentioned was about how corporate prepared you for, leadership and management and sales and all the things that corporate does. And I think that entrepreneurial world is so quick to deride corporate life. And I spent the majority, my first job was at a video shop. Best job in the world, paid to eat chocolate and watch movies. But my first real job, full-time job, was working in a cafe until I got my internship as a horticulturist. And so I very quickly in my working career went into government, and I kind of moved through different levels of government throughout my career before I went into private enterprise and then went back to government. But I think one of the things that many of the things that corporates do well, and I think as retailers, I say quite often, what are the big box stores doing that we can take and implement, because they're spending millions and millions of dollars to do these things. So if we can just go, well, that thing works and put it into my business in my way, why wouldn't we do that? But the things you just mentioned there, leadership, systems and processes. Most corporates have very strict systems and processes, and you put this into this file on your G drive, and you only use this email, and all those sorts of things that if you haven't been through life in a corporate or even a big company, you don't even know that that is a standard that you could be emulating in your own way inside of your own business. So thank you for sharing that.
I think that's such a good point too, Sal, because I actually did not hate my corporate job whatsoever. I was not leaving something behind that I hated.
I'm going to stop you there. You're an Enneagram 3. You are an achiever. So you're saying, did you like having a quota? No. I call BS, my friend, because
I love the game.
You love the game.
I love the competitiveness, and I loved winning. I loved it. The stress, and I say I didn't like the stress, and I'll never admit I like the stress.
Codependency.
But at the same time, when you don't have it, you're stressed because you don't have stress.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. It's so weird.
Yeah.
Anyways, I digress. But I do think, to your point, one of the first things I implemented as an entrepreneur and being self-employed was KPIs, right? Key performance indicators and goals that I am holding myself accountable to. What did I hate in corporate America is KPIs.
Performance reviews and KPIs. Oh, those again.
But those are things that I knew having the structure and the discipline. But the great thing is now is that I get to choose what moves the needle. And so I get to make those decisions. So it's a good and a bad thing, right? So yeah, there's wonderful things about being an entrepreneur, and there's hard things, just like corporate life.
The concept of KPIs, key performance indicators, if you're not familiar with that, let's just call them standards that you expect things to adhere to that you can measure against. And what I like about them and having them, because I'm going to say most business owners that we work with, I'm talking even 8-figure business owners, don't have very clear, if any, KPIs in place for themselves and for their team. But one of the most liberating things I've ever done is say, well, what are all the things that really annoy you? And let's write those things down, because then we can build KPIs that actually move the needle, because these things aren't frustrating you or upsetting you. And one of the things that just to give you an example, is you get to set these. And I set a KPI for our ops manager, which is 0 errors on anything that is deployed live. And he came back to me and he said, that's not possible. And I said, yes, it is. As long as we have tested everything. I'm not talking errors like the internet went down. I'm talking things that we had complete control over. And he had worked for a big company, and he's like, I don't think that that's possible. And I'm like, well, maybe this is not the right job for you then, because we should be able to test everything before it goes live. And if we don't, then that's on us. That's a systems problem. And it was one of my bugbears that actually brought that around, which was, I don't like when customer says the button doesn't work. I'm like, the button should work. You just didn't test
Right.
it. And so you mentioned KPIs, but I'm not letting you get away from this quota thing. So quotas, and you're calling it quotas. We can call it sales targets. We could call it revenue goals. But you mentioned that it was one of those things that was a bit of a bugbear, but as an achiever, it is the thrill of the game. But for people who aren't Enneagram 3s, for people who are maybe, Enneagram 1s, if you've never done Enneagram, my friends, go and do the free test. It is so insightful. We make every person that goes through our hiring process, even in the application stage, go through it because we know that certain people work well together. And you'll tend to find things like operations managers tend to be 1s. They like perfection with usually like a 3-8 wing. 3 is achiever. I'm an 8, which is like the absolute go-getter, the driving force behind everything, as if you couldn't tell that. This concept of quotas, you work with wholesalers. And so is this one of the things that you make them put in place if they don't already have it? We can call it quotas, we can call it goals, we can call it sales targets. But at the end of the day, I think that if you don't have a number written down on paper, and we like to do good, better, best, or baseline and stretch goals, I tend to find that businesses don't do as well. So tell me, are we gonna be aligned on this or not aligned on this? Because it's okay if we don't agree.
Yeah, so this is a great question. I find that some small business owners or some of my clients that I work with, they thrive under quotas and saying, hey, you're going to do this many outreach, whatever we're working on that week, and they will thrive under it. They're like me, where I will write something on a list just to cross it off, right? Some people will just cave under it. And so I don't necessarily implement the same type of coaching or the same type of targets for everyone. I really like to find out what motivates them and really push it from that angle. Because if you really put a quota per se, and sometimes you can articulate it in a different way, but at the end of the day, it's still a quota. It's still a sales target. But you have to really articulate it in a different way that will resonate with different personalities differently, if that makes sense.
It does make sense because I am very cut and dried. Like we work with a lot of product brands, and I will literally say, if you want to get your product into stores, you've got to do $100 a week. We're aiming for a 25% pickup rate. We're aiming for a 10% conversation rate and a 5% callback. So you can actually make an appointment to call someone back. Those numbers are slightly different depending on the niche, but realistically, that's kind of the numbers that I work with, and yours might be very different. But I'm like, if you've got to make 100 dials to have 5, if you're lucky, 5 follow-up conversations with the buyer, the store owner, whatever that looks like, then at the end of the day, if you're not prepared to do that, you're in the wrong business. You have 2 options. You can pay someone else to do it, or you have to do it.
Mm-hmm. And when you're starting off, it's usually you.
It usually is, yeah.
Right? And I talk about different ways to get your products into retail stores because you have, you can do calls. You can do, if you're local, you can, walk in there. A lot of people don't. My favorite way is to go in person. If that's the highest conversion, right? Is to walk into a store in person. You can send emails. You can send a pitch package. There's lots of different ways. But at the end of the day, to your point, what you just said, it's a math game. And so you have to know your numbers and your conversion rate. And when you first start off, it's not going to be as high as it's going to be when you really refine your email pitch and there's a lot of different factors in there. If you don't have great product photography, that's the first thing that when you send a product catalog, someone sees, right?
Oh, look, you are preaching to the converted, my
Yes.
friend.
Sometimes I have to start back and say, hey, before we're starting to, pitch to retailers, we've got to rewind a little bit, right? Because we can't send a product catalog that there's no brand cohesiveness. Sometimes it's not even a math problem at all. It's like we just got to go back to the basics of branding,
Yep. I love that. I have some questions for you because you've been on both ends of the spectrum. If we can just start with where you were on, if you create your own product, whether that is a handmade product, whether you're having that made for you, and you are trying to expand your business and you are looking to get retailers to stock your products, can you give us some tips on, because you said turn up in person. I'm going to be a little bit sassy and say, as a retailer, I freaking hated when reps did that because they would come in generally when you were busy and then they would just stand in a corner and you would be like, this is
No.
about you, not about me. You should be here
Yep.
to service me. So can
Mhm.
you, I'm going to ask you to do this and then I'm going to ask you some questions on the retailer side, but maybe if you could give us some tips, if you are trying to get your product out there, what can we do to try and increase the conversion rate apart from better photography?
Yes, yes. So let's assume you have all your branding and photography and you are like set, right? So, first off, let me say this. I did have a retail store before I moved. I did not mind at all when people came in store, but I have a caveat here. Never come on a busy Saturday afternoon. And if you're going to stand in the corner, that is the most awkward thing ever that you can do. Come on a Tuesday morning when it's not busy at all. And if it's busy, then you can drop your business card and leave and come back, right? Don't be awkward. Don't be awkward. Read the social cues. That's important as a salesperson. But I always say this. One of the ways that I first started, and I always tell my clients this, when I first started, it took me several months to get any wholesale accounts. I heard crickets for a while, but how I started was simply emailing. I found retailers that were aligned to my brand. And so my brand is handcrafted dough bowl candles. So these are wooden, hand carved bread bowl candles that are reusable. And they have a real farmhouse feel and they're giftable. So what I did is I took bright, colorful ribbon and tied around the candles and put a gift tag on them. And so I really marketed them to gift shops as a reusable gift, right? Something that's gift ready. They could, have it ready for their customers to give. I started sending pitch emails to gift shops. And if I was hearing crickets, I would just tweak one little thing at a time in my email. That's the biggest lesson that I learned in sales. It's a math number about how many pitch emails you're sending out. But if what you're doing is not working, then you continue to refine your process until you start to hear replies and you start to get the replies that you want. And so I remember, I was sending probably like 20 to 50 pitch emails a day. And it was month 2, and I think I had like 4 wholesale orders. Month 3, that compound effort of all of those pitch emails, I had like 120 retailers in month 3.
Congratulations. And did you go back and pick those original ones? Once you kind of started tweaking and you're doing marketing 101
Yeah.
is you only change one thing and then you test it.
Yes.
And then you change something else and you test it. Because otherwise, if we're changing too many things, we don't know what worked. But did you go back? Because I think this is another thing that people get worried about is they're going to annoy retailers or they're going to annoy the buyer. I'm like, the buyer is getting dozens of emails every day. Like they probably aren't going to remember you from last week.
So 90% of salespeople will never follow up. I think it's after the first follow-up email, 90% of salespeople will never follow up again. So you can stand out and be in the top 10% just by sending a second follow-up email, right? And so I just created a simple Excel spreadsheet, and that's how I stayed organized at first. Now I, actually use a CRM and all of that. But I absolutely followed up because what I realized, especially when I became a retailer myself, what I realized is that emails, what happens is your inbox is flooded. And so retailers are just not even seeing your email. They're busy stocking their shelves, helping customers. And so I remember when I started following up, the amount of retailers that actually said to me, "Thank you so much for following up with me. I love your candles and I meant to place an order and a customer walked in the door and I got distracted. Thank you for following up with me."
I call them micro moments. Like, we are so connected these days that you're reading your email while you're standing in the queue at the shopping at the grocery store, or while you're waiting to pick your kids up. Like, we're multitasking, and so it's easy for us to think, "I'll come back to that." And then meanwhile, you wake up tomorrow, and I don't know about you, Andee, but I wake up every morning to probably about 80 emails. 75 of them are junk, but it's all the alerts and the this and the that. And if I'm having a busy day, I just literally scroll through and delete them. I'm like, if it's important, you'll email me back. And if it's not, it wasn't that important.
And it's a mindset shift too, Sal, of really, if you have, I always tell my clients this, if you have a product that really serves your customers well, you owe it to follow up with them. And that's actually serving your retailers. That's not annoying them. You're serving them and you're showing them that you are a professional brand by following up with them and not ghosting them. Because I hear my clients all the time, they'll say, "Oh, I'm hearing crickets, right? I'm being ghosted." And I'm like, "Well, are you following up?" Because what you're doing is you're ghosting your retailers now. And so that's so important that you continually follow up with retailers that you're wanting your products on their shelves.
Now, if we flip it over, I think one of the things that retailers forget, it's in everybody's best interest if we sell a product. So if you're a supplier or if you're a wholesaler, you get more orders if the retailer sells more. As a retailer, if you sell more, you make more money, you bring more customers in. But I think a lot of retailers are too scared, or maybe don't even know, that they can approach their suppliers and their wholesalers and ask for ways to sell the product better. Now, for me, to be fair, this was like 15 years ago, and people tell me now I was so brazen doing this, but I literally, when I worked out, because I didn't grow up in retail, when the lady who did my merchandising, when she mentioned that if you go to a big box retailer and you want to be in the windows, you pay for that. If you want to be in the catalog that goes out into the mailboxes, you pay for that. If you want a specific shelf space, you pay for that. And I was like, oh, I can charge people for this? And so I just decided that I was going to charge my suppliers. If they wanted to be in my windows and they wanted to be in my email and they wanted to be on my social media, they would have to pay. And I did. I put together this kit where I think this was a long time ago, but I think it was $1,000 because I had multiple stores and you got a discount if you wanted to be in more than one store. And they could either pay the money or they could give me $1,000 wholesale worth of product, which for me was even better, right? Because it meant I ordered less, but then I made $2,000 on that product. And nearly all of them chose that option. And it was awesome because we literally had our windows filled every month and people were paying me for it. And I didn't know that that wasn't a thing. And so I think retailers forget that we can approach the people that we buy product from and say, hey, how can we work together so that we sell more of your stuff? So can you give us some tips? Because you've been on both sides. If a retailer is thinking, I really like this product or I really like working with this brand, how do we approach our wholesalers and our suppliers and say, what can we do to sell more of this stuff?
Yes, that's a great question. And I will say this, always approach it from a win-win scenario. And so I think to your point, if you are talking to a wholesale brand, it's a win-win scenario if the retailer is selling more of my candles because they're going to come back and purchase more. And so I'm willing to work with them to either, give more product or give a discount, or however, whatever that looks like, if they are selling more of my product. And so there's lots of different ways that you can get creative in that. One of my top retailers, one thing we do is we created a custom scent for her. And it's, we do a private label but we did a custom Christmas scent this year. And so we only sell it in her shop, and she does do just a little bit extra on that because they're private label, but she sells them like hotcakes, and I exclusively sell that scent to her. And so that is a way, and I help promote that for her. We do lives together on social media. And so I help sell it for her. So that's another thing that you can do. You can do joint social media campaigns. You can help if you are not afraid to sell live on social media. You can do that with your retailers. That's a huge one. But there's a lot of ways that you can get creative on how to help your retailers or for retailers to approach wholesale brands, but make sure that it's a win-win for everyone and you're selling more product.
One of the simplest things I think we can do from both sides of the coin as a retailer and as a supplier or a wholesaler is making sure we have a stockist page. It amazes me no end how many retailers don't request to be on a stockist page. I mean, where else are you going to get qualified customers for free? They are literally looking for that brand, for that product, and they want to be able to go and buy it, whether that is online or in store. And it surprises me how many wholesalers don't even have a stockist page, but also how many retailers don't demand that they are put on that page.
So here's a little secret too for wholesale brands. One thing that I often teach I have a free, well, actually I just put it on demand. It's a $25 5-day challenge. And one of the things that I teach, a little tip, is you don't go to a competitor's page, but you can find stockist by going to an adjacent products page. So for example, when I first started out, how I found a lot of retailers for my candles is I found a really popular chalk paint. Retailers that often carried that chalk paint started carrying my candles. So I went on their website and they had all of their stockist and they had contact name, email, phone number. And I just went crazy calling them and emailing. And so it's a great way to find stockist if you find an adjacent product and look at their stockist page.
I love that tip. Sneaky. But it's not even sneaky. It's just smart. It's understanding that if my customer likes this, there's a good chance they're going to like my product as well. And so why wouldn't I? Like the idea of even you found a product that was aligned, but even if you sell a hair treatment, finding somebody who sells specific types of shampoos or conditioners or like a complementary product, because then it becomes so much easier to sell. It's kind of like, oh, I noticed that you sell this. Our product is perfect for that. You could bundle it. You could upsell. You could cross-sell. We could give you some trial sizes. It becomes so much easier for a brand, a retailer to say yes.
Yes, and it gives you, to your exact point, it gives you a talking point in whether you're calling or you're emailing. It gives you a talking point to the retailer to say, a personal talking point to say, I noticed that you carry XYZ chalk paint, and a lot of my retailers carry that chalk paint and my products go perfectly with, that. And so when they hear that, there's already a proof point in there. And so it makes it very easy.
As we move into the busiest season of the year, I would love to know, for people who are listening, like, what are your top 3 sales tips to make sure that we're serving our customers, we are making more money, we're making our products more money, and we are just generally doing a great job at promoting what it is we sell?
So the first thing I will say, and this always amazes me, is how many brands, whether you are wholesaling or not, if you are a product brand or any small business owner, how many brands do not have an email list and are not marketing and building their email list? And so that is your number one marketing asset. And so as you are going through the holiday season, every single activity that you do, if you're going to a pop-up market, if you are however you're showing up, you should be building your email list with that activity, right? And so I always say to my clients, pop-up market, if you go to a holiday market, your definition, how you judge success from that market is not necessarily just the number of sales that you got from that market. It's also how many emails you got, because you can sell to those customers long after the market is over. And so that is a huge one. The second thing, and I already touched on this a little bit, but it is in the follow-up. Like I said, whether you're wholesaling, whether you have, a huge opportunity that landed in your lap from something, how many people never, ever follow up? And we miss opportunities because we simply didn't take the time, or we have the mindset that we're being annoying.
If you take this personally, you can automate all of this. It doesn't matter if we're D2C or B2B, you can automate the follow-up.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's so many ways that you can automate. Been one of my favorite things to learn as an entrepreneur is how to set things and forget them, right?
Love it. Love it. Okay, so building our email list, making sure we follow up. What is your third tip?
Always be iterating and making things better, even if this is your product, right? Listening to your customer and just refining and making things that much better with your feedback from your customers. And so I'll give you a specific example in my own product line. I have customers that love I have one of my best-selling scents is called Simply Clean. Of course, everyone loves a really fresh, clean scent. And so I am about to launch a all-purpose cleaning spray in this best-selling scent. And it'll be the first product that I've launched outside of a candle, but it is something that has been customer feedback time and time again. And so that is where I don't often, I don't do a ton of new products. I really niche down in what sells really well. But when you find a best seller and you consistently get that good feedback, don't be afraid to iterate and really spread out and build upon that and get creative on those best sellers. Make your products even better.
Great tips. So email list, follow up, and if you've got, we call them a money fountain. If you've got one of those best-selling products that's a money fountain, what can we do to capitalize it? Andee Hart, thank you so much. If people want to check out the podcast, where can they find you?
Yes, you can find it on any podcast platform. She sells differently. And then my website is andeehart.com, Andee with 2 E's.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Sal, for having me.
So that's a wrap. I'd love to hear what insight you've gotten from this episode and how you're going to put it into action. If you're a social kind of person, follow me at @TheSelenaKnight and make sure to leave a comment and let me know. And if this episode made you think a little bit differently, or gave you some inspiration, or perhaps gave you the kick that you needed to take action, then please take a couple of minutes to leave me a review on your platform of choice. Because the more reviews the show gets, the more independent retail and e-commerce stores just like yours that we can help to scale. And when that happens, it's a win for you, a win for your community, and a win for your customers. I'll see you on the next episode.